Live from the Counterpunch Media Studio in Davison, Michigan. It's time for real life, real families, real fitness. It's time for Derek Noel Fitness.
Excuse me, let's try that again. What is going on, everyone? Derek here, coming at you with episode 42, still from the couch, my nice comfortable couch with my lovely, lovely pillows that I totally didn't pick out myself. And we have another Q&A episode tonight. I decided to label this one, you bring the Q's, I bring the A's. So if you could, let's go ahead and give this video a share real quick and make sure we're getting it out to as many people as we possibly can. And if you have any questions, make sure you drop it in. Simply because I don't really have a way of seeing them right off the bat. So, that being said, this is episode 42. We are going to have a good time today. We are going to be talking about snacking, tracking, food, basically everything. There's actually one thing that I forgot to grab, but I'll still make sure that we cover it, and it has to do with shoes, so we'll get there. But first, we might as well start this off nice and strong with the question that I feel like a lot of people actually have, and this is one that was basically asked. I reworded it a little bit, but the question is snacking at night ruining my progress? And this can be a complicated answer, or it could be a very simple answer. The simple answer is a maybe, and let's go into why it's exactly a maybe. So there has been this whole nutrition guideline that you don't eat after 8 p.m. Because if you eat after 8 p.m., then you're going to be storing things as fat and yada, yada, yada. The important thing to remember is it's calories in versus calories out. So if you are already 800 calories short on the day and you're snacking and you end up snacking 300 calories right before you go to sleep, you're still in a net deficit of 500 calories, which means you're still in a calorie deficit, which means you will still be able to lose weight. Will it reflect in the morning? Not necessarily, because you have eaten and then it's still in your body and you haven't done anything to get rid of that excess weight, whether it is basically going to the bathroom or sweating it out or anything like that. Because remember, as soon as you eat something, the weight of what you ate is automatically added to the weight of your body because you're putting things in your stomach and it adds weight to it. That includes water too, by the way. So if you're drinking a 16-ounce bottle of water, 16 fluid ounces of water, specifically of water because that can be different. That's a whole other cooking conversation, by the way. 16 ounces of water or 16 ounces of weight is 1 pound. And that's not just going to magically go anywhere until you do something to get rid of it. Like sweating or going to the bathroom are the two easiest ways. So snacking at night, it can ruin your progress. If you are already at your calorie goal for the day and you have the munchies at night, so you go out for a midnight snack, and you eat that midnight snack and then go to bed, or you go out and you decide to pour yourself a nice glass of wine and that is considered your nighttime snack even though it's liquid, then those types of things can ruin your progress. It's all about tracking what you're actually doing. So is snacking at night ruining your progress? Maybe. Are you in a calorie deficit? Are you making sure that you are not just smashing 600 calories or 800 calories or a pint of ice cream right before you go to sleep after you've already had a full day of meals? The reason that is snacking at night ruining my progress is even really a question is because when you don't snack at night, you tend to eat less calories. And that less calories creates that calorie deficit. So there's a really good answer for if you think snacking at night is actually ruining your progress. And remember, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments on Facebook. I would love to be able to answer your questions as soon as they come up. And speaking of calories, the next question is kind of related to that. What is the best way to track macros? And this can be kind of multifaceted. We can do a few different things for this. But the best way to track macros is however you feel comfortable doing it and however you don't feel super stressed doing it. For me, I can track my proteins, my fats, my carbs, absolutely no problem, down to a T. By weighing things, I have absolutely no problem with that. For others, they kind of need to guesstimate it because they really don't care that much, or it really stresses them out to constantly be thinking about the weight of food that they're trying to be eating or putting things on a scale. But really, once you get the system down, it's really quick and easy. And then from there, we can go into a little bit more nuance. So if we're trying to figure out the best way to track macros, number one, we want to find out which way is best. There are a few different apps. The most popular one is MyFitnessPal. That's the one that I personally use. I also paid for the premium so that I could specify and fine-tune everything instead of just working in percentages. Because MyFitnessPal, with the free account, you can only adjust by percentages of 5, and if it's not exactly specific to what I need, that's how fine-tuned I like to be. I like to be able to go down to the exact gram, like 167 grams of protein, which I think is actually what I'm supposed to be at. I don't have the app up right now, so I can't really tell you that exact number, but I like being at that exact number because then it gives me a precise goal to hit. From there, if I am tracking precisely like that, cool. If I'm just starting to get into everything, really probably the biggest thing is going into calorie counting instead of macronutrient counting, where we want to make sure that we stay in a certain range of calories, because then we're creating that calorie deficit. And if you're not working out, and if you're just trying to lose weight for the first time ever, or it's your first time trying to count your calories, it's probably best that you don't make things super complicated, just because then it will be overwhelming and then you're just going to not want to do it. So figuring out a nice way to get your calories going and to count your calories is going to be a good way for you. So you can see where all this nuance comes in at. There's a lot of different answers to this. We can even break this down to how we weigh our food. And my scale is a perfect example. I can weigh things in grams or I can weigh things in ounces. I like going the grams route because then, again, it gives me that super hyper specific number that I can hit. And then if I use ounces, it's still fairly close, but I'm not able to as finely tune it. So for example, if I do like 150 grams of rice, I know exactly how many calories and exactly how many grams of carbs in it, and I can use that number to round it off to an even number. Versus if I'm using ounces, the 4 ounces versus 4.1 ounces, there's still a little bit of leeway there. So it's, again, it's a really, really tight way to make sure that I'm squeezing as many calories as possible into or out of whatever I'm eating. So I really like going grams, just going hard in the paint. MyFitnessPal for most things has a gram measure, and if not, there's some simple math you can do. Other people really like using ounces. A lot of times if I'm doing proteins, I'll just use ounces because that's what I'm used to as an American. If someone outside of the United States is watching this, obviously you're going to be using grams or kilograms, but if you're eating a kilogram of food in one meal, that's impressive because that's 2.2 pounds right there. That's some big food. Hopefully you're trying to gain some weight if you're doing that. So again, that's a really big way to nuance and track those macros. We got to find whatever works best for you. What works best for me, tracking the grams down to the precise number of macronutrient, that's not for everybody. If Sally is trying to count calories for the first time in her life, I, as her nutrition coach, wouldn't make her do that. I would have her start to focus on learning what certain amount of food, what certain numbers of foods look like, so what certain weights look like. But I'm going to be focused more on calories than anything else, because at that point, calories is going to be the biggest bang for your buck. Then once you get those calories down, then you can move on into those macronutrients and fine-tune those macros in order to get the most bang for your buck and make sure that you're maintaining muscle and burning specifically fat. But for a lot of people just starting out, they're just looking at the weight number. They're not looking specifically at fat. So keep that in mind. Question number 3 kind of goes hand in hand with these other two, actually. How convenient. It's almost like that was planned. The third question is it better to binge on healthy foods than unhealthy foods? And this is kind of a double-edged sword. I could probably get in trouble no matter with any number of groups, but I'm going to say it's really not good to binge on anything, number one, which I think a lot of people can agree with. But also, if you're binging on a healthy food, you can basically do the same amount of damage. It is possible to do the same amount of damage than if you were to eat unhealthy foods. And let me explain. If you're eating healthy foods, chances are you're equating healthy and whole foods, which is actually a good thing, that you're trying to binge on healthy foods. Because if you're eating 12 ounces of baked potatoes, which is, by the way, like 2 baked potatoes is that number. So if you're binging and you're eating 2 baked potatoes, that's still not too bad. If you're eating a half a box of cookies, that can be bad. I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm willing to bet eating an entire, we'll use Chips Ahoy cookies because that's my guilty pleasure. Eating an entire row of Chips Ahoy cookies is definitely way worse than me eating 2 sweet potatoes, for example. 2 sweet potatoes is probably going to have like 65 grams of carbs, maybe 70. If I put butter in it, there's some fats, and I'm looking at probably 400 or 500 calories right there. If I eat a half a row of cookies, there's 210 calories in 2 or 3 cookies. So if I'm eating an entire row, I'm eating 10 servings of that. All of a sudden, I'm 2,000 calories in, and all of a sudden, it's bad. So if I was eating an unhealthy food, so if I was eating French fries versus versus a baked potato, for example, so you take a food which is neither healthy nor unhealthy because potatoes are potatoes, and you cook them in a healthy way versus an unhealthy way, baking them versus deep frying them, then there might be a little bit of leeway, but that's more of a wash than if I'm trying to eat things like that. So pay attention to the amount of volume that your food takes up and determine based on that. Don't determine solely on if something is healthy or not. Do the research, figure it out, and you'll be able to tell whether something is better to binge on. Then it turns into a this or that. If you're determined to eat something and you're determined to binge on something, try and make a halfway decent decision, I guess. Keep that in mind. Oh, still no questions, huh? All right. Let's go into question number 4. How can I prevent shin splints? This is a multifaceted question. This is something that was asked vaguely. I don't exactly know what the situation this person is in because shin splints can come on from a variety of ways. Number 1 is going to probably be shoe support and supporting your feet with improper shoes. For example, if I were to run in weightlifting shoes, you better believe that shin splints are definitely going to be a thing. But shin splints can also happen from lack of mobility in the ankle and in the muscles and in the shin, and that can cause that. Shin splints, by the way, are technically like microfractures of the shin bone based on a lot of impact, so that's a big thing, which is why shoes are important. It might also be just weak bones, and then all of a sudden you're walking all the time, or you drastically increase the load which your bones are taking. So if you go from nothing to running 5 miles a day every single day, for example, then those shin splints are probably going to come into play a lot faster than if you worked yourself up into that 5 miles. Again, I'm not a running expert, I'm not a shin splint expert, but in my experience, that's what I've seen. And the best way to prevent them is to, number 1, let them rest and let them recover and not just force more exercise and more wear and tear on them. That's only going to make it worse. But also, number 2, trying to figure out what kind of shoes you're wearing. Which actually brings us to our next question. This is already question number 5. I feel like we may or may not be flowing through this today. It's okay. What kind of shoes should I wear to work out? This has actually been asked to me a lot. This is something that I'm actually fairly passionate about, is making sure you're wearing the proper kind of shoes. Number 1, if you are a runner, you want to make sure you have a nice running shoe that actually fits the contours of your feet how they should. Don't ask me how exactly that you measure that. That's what the shoe experts are for. You can probably Google that answer. I'm not an expert in that kind of stuff, not anywhere near that, but you want to make sure that you're getting a nice, good pair of running shoes. They will mitigate that shin splint issue. They'll also mitigate things like getting blisters from your shoes, running and doing all of those things. But beyond running shoes, which are a whole other thing, and if you are planning on running, make sure you have a designated pair of running shoes, and you're not just trying to run in some old cross trainer or some $20 pair of New Balances or something like that. Not that I'm saying a New Balance is a particularly bad shoe, maybe that's exactly what you need, then you can move on from there. I was just using New Balance as an example. But when it comes to working out in shoes, this is where it can be very, very finicky when it comes to what kind of shoes it is. And that's where I come into play with having multiple different types of shoes for different kinds of exercise. For example, if I'm doing a high-intensity interval training circuit, or if I'm doing CrossFit, I want to make sure that I have a, quote, CrossFit shoe, which is a really good form of a cross trainer. You have things like my personal favorite, Reebok CrossFit Nanos. I think I've had every pair of CrossFit Nanos since like the 6 or the 7. They are my absolute favorite. That's what I use. Nike Metcons are also really good. My best friend actually uses Nike Metcons to work out. They're awesome. One of the other coaches that I coach at boot camp with, uses those as well. And I actually recommended them to him because he really likes Nike, so there's those. Adidas has them. Any popular athletic shoe company has a kind of CrossFit cross-trainer shoe, just because CrossFit is so big now. They all wanted to get in on that market. Now, here's the deal though. If I'm using that shoe, but I'm doing solely powerlifting, can they get the job done? Yes. But there are a couple different kinds of shoes that you want for there. And by the way, if you're getting one of those cross trainers, they're actually what I recommend for doing boot camp sessions or doing any sort of high intensity interval training where you're doing multiple different kinds of exercise, whether it's lifting and then moving or anything like that, or if you're going on shorter runs, they're just fine. But again, if you're going on a long run, so more than a half a mile run, you're, again, not exact numbers, don't take my word for it. I'm just using these numbers, for example. If you're going on more than like a half a mile run though, you probably want to use a running shoe over a cross trainer, or even one of these next shoes that I'm going to talk about. From here, if we're going into weightlifting or powerlifting or bodybuilding, then we want to look at what exercises we're actually doing and what our ankle mobility says. Because our ankles, just like our wrists, make our feet, just like our ankles make our hands, go back and forth. And they need to be able to move. And when we squat, for example, we need to make sure that we are in a position where our ankles allow us to get down into a deep squat. A lot of times, if people are having a really hard time getting down into a squat, either their ankle mobility is terrible or their hip mobility isn't very good. It usually, unless there's some sort of injury, doesn't have very much to do with the knees themselves. Again, barring any previous injuries or anything like that. Obviously, a doctor is going to be able to tell you more what's going on with your knees than some guy on Facebook who is giving you who's basically talking to you about these things that doesn't know your specific situation. So before anybody goes, but Derek, my doctor said that I tore my ACL, so obviously it's my knee. Yeah, I know. If it's your ACL or your MCL injury previously, obviously that's going to play a factor in your squats. But if someone's never had any knee, form's always important. So that's where different shoes come into play. A lot of people have probably seen people work, or a lot of people work out in, and I've seen a lot of people work out in Chucks, Chuck Taylors, All-Stars, Converse, whatever you want to call them, whether they're high tops or low tops. A lot of people work out in that super flat shoe, which if you're doing a powerlifting movement where the point is to move as much weight as possible, that hard sole, really flat shoe is actually a really good thing to be able to use, because basically it comes down to physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So for example, if I am deadlifting, I want my feet as firm into the hard ground as I can, because if I'm pushing down, then that ground is pushing up on me just as hard. If I have a really soft shoe, I'm going to lose some of that force down into the ground, or if I'm pulling off of a soft piece of ground while I'm trying to deadlift, so if I'm pulling off on like wet grass where the dirt is going to let me sink in, I'm not going to be able to pull as much weight because the physics just don't line up. I'm losing force through that because of the softer shoe. It's absorbing some of that force, and then the floor absorbs the rest. So then the floor is only going to push up a certain amount, and it's just going to mess with my numbers. I've personally tested this with my squat. I did this on basically in gymnastics mat. I tried doing a back squat, and my back squat was a good 60 or 70 pounds lighter on that floor than it was on a hard than it was on a hard mat. It's crazy how much that pays a difference. Now let's talk about squats for a second. If I'm going down and I want to be able to break parallel, so say I am squatting specifically for the sport of powerlifting, where I need to go below parallel, which is, by the way, hip underneath the knee is parallel. Hip at knee is not get that below. That's where these other things called like weightlifting shoes, or if you're Olympic weightlifting, they're really convenient because it decreases the angle that your ankle needs to allow you to bend, which actually allows you to sit down deeper into a squat. And if you don't believe that that's actually how that happens, go find either a textbook or something that has about a 1 or 2 inch lip on it, and put it down, put your heels on it, let your toes sit on the regular ground, and sit down into a squat. And I can almost guarantee you will get lower in your squat doing that than if you weren't standing on that book. I guarantee it. That is 100%. That is a Derek. Oh my goodness, you were right. You can save those comments because that's just how it works. That's exactly what a weightlifting shoe does. It decreases that angle, so it increases the angle originally, and then it lets you go down deeper because ankle mobility is an issue. Can some people work out in chucks and squat in chucks? Yes. Can everyone? No. And if you are going nowhere near parallel, then I do actually recommend using a squat shoe after checking your form. If your form is terrible, then let's work on that. That'll probably fix a lot of issues. But if your form is good and you're still just not able to get down into that parallel point, then let's try adding weightlifting shoes in temporarily to see how that goes. Or we can change even your squat angle, but again. So there are different kinds of shoes for whatever. Now let's talk about working out barefoot real quick. A lot of people like working out barefoot, and if it works for you, it works for you. Me personally, if I'm trying to do any sort of exercises just barefoot, the arches of my feet actually really start to hurt. So I typically do wear shoes anytime I'm doing any weight-bearing exercises, just because, again, the arches of my feet hurt. It was probably from me wearing shoes my entire life, but that's just how my feet are. So it really depends. If I'm just doing bodyweight exercises, though, I can just wear socks or go barefoot myself. I used to coach boot camp for about 2 years just in socks until I started burning through all of my socks because of the mat, and it was just basically literally burning holes into my socks. So then I started just wearing shoes, solve that problem outright. So always pay attention to what kind of shoes you should wear. If you have any questions about that, please make sure you reach out. And if you want to use it as an excuse to go buy more shoes because you love shoe shopping, you know who you are, then by all means, go ahead. Real quick, before I get into the next set of exercises, let's take a real quick break.
You're listening to Derek Noel Fitness here on IPMNation.com/counterpunch. He'll bring the smarts. Now the sweat, well, that's up to you.
All right, we are already over 20 minutes in. I actually spent a little bit more time than I wanted to talking about shoes, but that's okay because it is a fairly important and commonly asked question. So now you know how we should do about that. Let's get into the good stuff now. The next question is, how do I get a bigger butt, Derek? I've been asked this way too many times for comfort. But there are a lot of things you can do. What should you not do? First of all, number one, you shouldn't do just straight up knee extensions. You want your glutes involved as much as you can. Your butt is the gluteus maximus. We learned it in elementary school and we made jokes about it. But that's our butt, that's our booty. We have a bunch of other muscles that also need to be worked more for stability and balance, but if you want a bigger butt, the gluteus maximus is actually probably the strongest muscle in your body, not counting your heart, because we walk around all day. So what can we do? We can make sure we're walking with proper form. We can squat. We can deadlift with heavy loads, because in order for a muscle to grow big, it needs to be strong. So we need to make sure we have strong glutes. We can do glute bridges. We can do hip thrusts. Hip thrusts have actually been proven to be one of the best exercises you could do to grow your glutes. And if you don't know, look up Brett Contreras. You can find him on Instagram. He has a PhD. He runs a gym called the Glute Lab. He is the expert on growing your glutes and glute workouts specifically. He's written a lot of different papers on it, and he really knows his stuff. Definitely check him out. But what we don't want to do is waste our time on a bunch of simple accessory work just because we think, and that's what we saw on Instagram. We want to make sure that we're getting our information from really good sources with people who have exercise science backgrounds, who have a proven track record of getting results. Those are the people we want to make sure we are following when we're getting information on things like how to get a bigger butt. Not just someone on Instagram who happens to have a nice butt and, quote, that's what she does. Because guess what? Sometimes nice butts are genetic too. So there's that whole other argument. You can build a good one, but a lot of it is also genetic. So keep that in mind. The next question, going back to preventing shin splints-ish, is should I start running? And anyone who knows me knows my true feelings on running. I hate running unless I'm playing a sport. I can run all day if I'm playing a sport. I'm totally cool with it. Running for the sake of running, I just hate. But the thing is, that's a personal preference. That's a personal bias. I don't like running. And that being said, if you want to start running, start running. If you don't like running, but you force yourself to do it, find another form of cardio that you like. If you would rather go on a Stairmaster, or go on an elliptical, or ride a bike, or get on a rowing machine, or go kayaking, or stuff like that, do whatever you like. If you like running, then don't stop running because you like it, and chances are it probably has some sort of mental calming effect, that runner's high that people get. Am I ever going to start running? I usually do some sprint work. I hate doing any sort of distance work. I literally run 1 5K a year, maybe, just for the sake of it. But that's me. Just because I don't like running doesn't mean there aren't a ton of other people who do. And I'm not going to be one to tell you not to do something just because I don't like it. So if you like running, then keep running. That's totally cool. If you don't, find another way. Unless I'm specifically programming it for a purpose for someone, which I have been known to do as well. Next question comes to working out and body part splits, which if you don't know, it's basically splitting up which body part you work on what day. So keeping that in mind with this question, should I only focus on 1 to 2 body parts a day? Which basically comes out to, should I do a true bodybuilding split? And this is really a big it depends question. Are you a competitive bodybuilder? If you are a competitive bodybuilder, then yes, probably you should focus on 1 to 2 body parts a day. If you are just looking to work out, maybe get a little bit of muscle, you can probably just go with an upper body, which involves all of the muscles in your upper body, your chest, your back, your arms, all of those subsets within those. And then you could do a lower body, so all of the muscles in your legs, and maybe throw in some abs on another day. For most people, doing that just upper body, lower body split is probably going to be enough. If you're looking to specifically grow a body part, you're going to want to spend a specific amount of time on that. There is a such thing as time under tension, and that is one of the most effective ways to actually build muscle, is to increase the amount of time under tension that your muscles spend. So the time spent with your muscles working is what time under tension basically means. So whether that is like a 2 or 3 second up and a 3 or 4 second curl all the way down, that's what matters most when it comes to actually building muscles. So if you want to, really, it's whatever you have time for. If you have time to spend an hour and a half just working on your chest muscles, by all means do it. Will you blast your chest? Yes. Will you see a little bit increased strength and muscle growth from doing it that way? Maybe, probably, but for the majority of people, they're not specifically looking for that. Just doing an upper body split or doing a bunch of full body workouts where you hit a little bit each day is probably going to be best there. Let's see how much time we have left. We have time for one more question. And this is going to be a question that I was just asked today. And Cami, I see your question about preventing shin cramps. I will go ahead and summarize what I was talking about earlier, because I did talk about that a little bit earlier on the show, but I'll go back to that in just a second. How can I lose 10 pounds in 6 days? My knee-jerk reaction to this question is don't even try. Just don't. In order to lose 10 pounds in 6 days, a lot of times that's going to be dehydration. And I guarantee you, if you just get a little bit dehydrated, if you lose 10 pounds from dehydration, number one, you're going to feel bad. You're going to feel miserable. But also, you're not going to see as much of a difference in the mirror as you think it is. And that's simply because losing 10 pounds in 6 days, I can almost guarantee you that is not going to happen with fat. It's going to happen with losing water weight. And if you're losing a little bit of water weight and you're cutting down on bloating, then yeah, totally, cool. You can lose 10 pounds that way. But for most people, they're looking to lose that 10 pounds specifically of body fat in 6 days, and just don't even try. Just don't. And that's what I'm going to leave that at. Let's go back to Cammy's question real quick about preventing shin cramps. Honestly, shoes are going to be the big thing. And making sure that you are going through and actually stretching your shins out, which means stretching out your calves. If you're not used to doing any sort of stretching, that's probably going to be where I'd say to start. Start putting them through an increased range of motion, and check your shoes. Typically, one thing I do know is you should change your running shoes every 500 to 600 miles that you put on them. So if you're training in those shoes and you've been training for 2 years in those shoes and you've been training for marathons, chances are you're way over that 500-mile mark. You're probably going to need to get new shoes. And make sure they fit your feet properly. That's going to be number one. Also, make sure you're giving them enough rest. I know that here in Michigan, we have the Crim coming up. It's a super popular marathon for those outside of Michigan who don't know what the Crim is. But just because you have that coming up doesn't mean you can't use a lower impact form of training to get your cardio up in order to do something like a marathon. So there's always more than one way to train for something, and if you're getting really, really bad shin cramps, then chances are you might need to lay off and work more on putting them through that full increased range of motion, which you can find some sort of shin stretch. Again, Google is a wonderful place. Just make sure that you're getting it from a person who knows what they're talking about. And go there. And Kami, I know you're coming at that from a running perspective, so hopefully that helps out a little bit. Find someone. If you shoot me a message, I can actually refer you to someone who is a little bit more qualified to talk about that specific topic than I am. I have no problems hooking you up with that person. Chances are you might actually know her. She is someone who's local and runs a lot. So I can shoot you. Definitely not a marathoner. Me neither. But shoot me a private message and I will link you up with someone who you can talk to who will probably have a way better answer for you. And hopefully that helps you out. All right, everybody. This has been it. We have reached the end of episode 42. If you could, please give this video a like, give it a share, and make your way over, mosey on over to our YouTube channel and give us a subscribe. That is Counterpunch Media on YouTube. You are watching this either on YouTube right now or you are watching it on Facebook at facebook.com/TheDerekNoel, Derek Noel Fitness. That is me. You can also find me on Instagram at TheDerekNoel. If you would like, please make sure you send your questions. I see myself doing a bunch more Q&A. Send your questions at me throughout the week. So even if you're not watching this live, I'm still looking to answer your questions. Shoot them to me. And let's get ready to crush this next week, everybody. It's Sunday night. Let's do something good tonight to set ourselves up for success tomorrow, whether it's going to bed in 30 minutes earlier or setting an alarm tomorrow for the first time in 5 or 6 weeks. Trust me, I've been in that boat. Let's have a great, great night, and let's crush this next week, everyone. Have a great night.